Hi, and welcome to another episode of the Louisiana Children's Museum in Dialogue series. We are so excited today to be joined by Ashley Scott of Chatternola, and we're going to talk about speech and language development. Hi, Ashley.
Hi,
Welcome
thanks
back.
so much for having me.
Yeah, we had Ashley for our first 1,000 days. She came in and talked to parents, and they raved, and was like, we have to have you come back to talk to our larger audience.
Awesome. Glad to be here.
Yes, and we're glad to talk to you about speech and language. We've had some parents wonder about what is it, when should I be concerned about it? So can we just start with, what does a speech and language pathologist do?
Wonderful question. So we have a unique skill set, right? And generally people think you teach people how to talk. And while some of that may be true, those are not the only things that we work with. So we work with pediatrics, well, actually infancy through adulthood, into geriatrics. And so we work on communication disorders, feeding, swallowing, cognitive impairments, developmental delays, breastfeeding mamas who are having issues because of oral tethered tissues, just an array of disabilities, disorders, and all under the guise of a communication impairment or a feeding or swallowing impairment. As an SLP, there are a myriad of facilities you could work in: nursing homes, hospitals, home health, schools, private practice, corporate businesses who work on accent modifications and reduction.
Okay.
You can work with just about anywhere where people are who are communicating.
I didn't realize that.
Yes.
What about misconceptions of what a speech and language pathologist does?
Mostly in the pediatric field, right? We play. A lot of our intervention is play-based, but because it's early intervention, we know that's how children learn. So we're not playing for the sake of play, but we're actually working on all of the skills that allow you to be able to interact with another person in a meaningful way. In terms of older kids, maybe adults, people look at us like, oh, you teach people how to talk. And for some, that may be it, but speech, right, articulation, the way we say sounds, is not the only scope of what we do. We work on language, written communication, expressive vocal expression, communication boards, AAC devices, more than teaching someone how to talk.
We talked about this. We have a little, every 2 weeks we're on Fox 8 News. And one of the people on Fox 8, when I told him we were going to be pitching today's show, he said, oh, my speech and language pathologist at school saved my life. And he still remembered, and now he's on the news. So I was just like, well, it worked. Whatever that
Absolutely.
SLP did for you in school totally worked. So tell us about what, I know you said that, where's Chatternola, by the way?
We are in Metairie.
Okay.
Right adjacent to Trader Joe's. We're a private practice clinic. We do outpatient services for speech therapy and ABA therapy. And ABA therapy is more geared towards kids with autism, but we work with birth through 8 years. We do see some older clients, but the bulk of our population are those early intervention little people.
Because one of our parents, when we said that we were having this, I think this happened when you came to visit as well. When should a parent get their child evaluated?
As soon as you suspect concerns, right? Okay. As soon as you suspect that something is not quite right. I always say, trust your mommy gut. Because when you're a mom, especially if you're a new mom, you're not really knowing what to expect. And so you tend to lean on your community for advice, for guidance on what should I do. And sometimes that's not always the best thing. Because generally what you'll hear is, give them some time, just wait a while. And we know early intervention, right? Those years count, birth to 3. Biggest boom of language. 83% of your language is learned by the time you make 3, right? And so we also know that brain's plasticity, right? Its ability to make new neural connections, learn new information, change shapes and patterns of change trajectories, if you will, that happens in those critical years. And so waiting is not the right thing to do, but sometimes it's the thing that's done because people just say, give them some time. And while every child develops at their own rate, it's definitely you're needing to be looking at this kid is consistently behind in skills, milestones, if you will, that other children have. And so the right time is whatever time you have a feeling that something's not quite right. I always tell mommies, trust your gut, right? Even if someone's saying, oh, my kid didn't talk until they were 4, my kid didn't speak until they were 5, my kid didn't talk until they were 6, and now they're a lawyer, right? Sometimes that happens, but that's not typical. Even if they're able to carry out meaningful communication later, not speaking until you're 6 is not typical. That is not what happens. Your kid just happens to be the exception. That's definitely not the rule. And so we want to let parents know that it's okay to seek help. You may not need it, but if you never go to seek it, you don't know if you need it or not. So definitely, as soon as you have that feeling, something's not quite right, then I would speak to my pediatrician about it. And hopefully they're able to offer some guidance that'll get you to where you need to go. And if not, you can always look up your local speech language therapy clinics and just say, hey, I want to get my kid screened. I want to get them evaluated. And if nothing's needed, then great. At least you know where you stand. But if intervention is needed, the earlier, the better, just because the impact that you can make on overall development is at its greatest.
I love Go With Your Gut, for sure. We also have opportunities here in Play With Me where families can talk to other families and like, oh, our baby's about the same age. Tell me about what your baby's going through. Tell me about, so not to get overly anxious about anything, but there are a lot of children that are about the same age and Play With Me, and they can start doing that, having those conversations with other parents and with our early learning director, who's pretty much like, well, at this age, they should be doing these things. I remember when my goddaughter, 2 years old, language explosion, like she was saying everything. So was it about 2, right?
2.5, 3 years, some a little bit earlier. And so when I'm counseling, if you will, with the parents or just going through what's typical, what's atypical, I like to say, just because your kid didn't get it, the continuum doesn't stop. So again, 2.5 to 3, you're gonna see the greatest gains in language, right? Kids are moving from 1 to 2 words to 2 to 4 words a day. And so if your little one is not saying anything and their peer is moving on to 2 to 4 words a day, imagine 5 days in, 10 days in, a year in, the gap that is beginning to make itself wider. You're definitely not at an advantage at that point, but early intervention helps. All is not lost. It's just the sooner, the better. You want to catch it before the gap is so wide that you're now just trying to maintain it growing any bigger versus we're able to close that gap because we're teaching, or the idea is that you're teaching at a rate faster than typical development kids are learning so that they are able to catch up.
That whole conversation with the parents about neuroplasticity and teaching is available must be very comforting for them to know, okay, we're on the right path now. We can make some changes here. Is it very time consuming for parents to integrate some of these techniques at home? Like, is there something they have to be like, okay, I have to?
Well, it's not in terms of work, right? You don't have to go out and buy 100 different toys, 100 different manipulatives to work with your kids. Our idea and what we coach our parents in through our parent trainings are making everyday activities count, right? You're a mom, some are stay-at-home moms. We're busy, life is moving, it doesn't stop. We don't have 1 hour a day. We wish that we could, right? But that's not the reality. The reality is I have to wash the clothes, I gotta get meal prepped, wash the dishes, clean the house for maybe some kids that are coming in from school. How do we make those moments meaningful? Well, we could start by washing the dishes. What does that look like for a kid just with language, right? It might be, hey, find a cup, buddy. Cup in. Give me that spoon. Where's the spoon? Or it might be, you're dumping and ready, set, we should pour it out, whee, and it goes down. And so you're making those sounds and you're making it fun and you're getting the things you need to get done. Also, folding laundry, right? Having the kid just follow simple directions. Give to me, put in, moving clothes from the washer to the dryer. when we're folding, can you match the socks? Those are all fun things. Oh, I'm gonna put the sock on my hand and make it a puppet. So it's not something that you need to have a lesson plan, go out and buy a kit, just everyday things. Walk into the mailbox. Help me. We should open the door. Open, right? You can incorporate sounds, signs, and it's everyday things that you would already be doing. Also, Louisiana, every state has it, an early intervention program. So any kid who's under the age of 3, if you qualify for services, there's a professional that'll come out to your home and help you with that. For most families, it's free of charge. It is going to be based on income, but it's based on whatever the state's poverty rate or whatever those numbers are. But you do have access to assessments, to intervention, parent coaching. All of those things make a difference. So it's not so much that it requires a lot on your part. It just it's a mind shift, right? So if you were washing dishes and you were quietly just humming to yourself, now you might need to start labeling all the things, right? And we might need to include the little person in it and make it fun and make it meaningful in a way that maybe you didn't think was necessary before.
Right.
Just to give them the exposure.
And that's great advice for all parents, whether they are worried about something or not. Just build that vocabulary.
Yes.
So we have a question about iPads. Tell us about that connection or myth. I'm not sure which one it is.
Do iPads cause autism? Does increased screen time cause autism, right? That's the thing that kind of swirls around. There's some research that has been done, but when you think of where we're moving in the world, right, it's coming. It's here, actually. I'm a dinosaur, probably. I'm like, we don't need iPads, right? We can just work on that social interaction, but iPads, that's the thing. We give the kids the iPads because we need to get things done. What happens is, think about as an adult, when you go to dinner, look around the restaurant. Everyone's on the phone, scrolling, no one's interacting. Sometimes they are, sometimes they aren't. But for a kid who is already exhibiting some language delays, social interaction is the foundation for all learning. No matter how you slice the pie, it's social interaction. Your social skills lay the foundation. And so if as adults, we're already socially disconnected because we're in the virtual world, when you impose that on a kid, and not even impose, this is just kind of where we're going with things, then they're already at a disadvantaged state because they're not going to get the social interaction. And what you tend to see is kids are now more focused on screen time than they are the human back and forth connection. And so you'll start to see some little people, they're really busy, right? Not able to complete tasks, not able to sit still. Everybody looks like they're so hype and ADHD. And then when you sit to maybe do regular stuff, let's sing a song, let's do a nursery rhyme, they can't sit still long enough. And it's because of all of the screen time. It's happening and they're not needing to do anything for it. And so now when it's time to sit with just you and me, like, that's not fun, right? You can't keep that level of momentum going. And so while it doesn't cause autism, there's not a study that says if you give your kid an iPad, more than likely or not, they'll have autism. It does contribute to some of the social delays that you start to see just because the kid is more focused on the screen. It's fun, it's happening, it's automatically reinforcing, and I don't really have to do much other than hit the play button. With human connection, it's a give and it's a take, it's a serve and a return, and that's where you kind of start to see the breakdown.
We had an expert on our In Dialogue series, Dr. Myron Murphy, talked about screen time. And she cited the APA study that before 2 years old, there should be no screen time. And one of the things that really struck us was that you should also not have that background noise all the time on the TV in the background. And I keep saying that, and every time I talk to parents, turn that TV off, because it is highly distracting and it is focusing. Their attention they can't focus on one activity or one person at a time. And have you seen the little girl do the TED Talk on Serve and Return?
No.
Okay, so I'll have to put a link to it. So there's this little 7-year-old who's talking to everybody at the TED Talk audience, and she has a baby on stage, and she's just explaining what happens when you're like this on your screen and your baby is trying to trying to get your attention and he doesn't. It's really powerful. So we'll put a link on that.
Definitely. That's awesome. That's definitely a great point to make with screen time, APA, with under 2. And what I'm seeing more and more when kids are coming in for evals, what we've noticed, there's this game, and maybe this is telling my age, I'm not sure, but you put the kid behind you, you say, where's Shannon? And the kid's laughing and giggling and doing all those things. And they're like, I'm right here. And so when I ask, like, hey, how does he, because generally they'll say, my kid's not responding to their name, right? I'm like, when you play those games, what do they do? And they're like, what is that? And it's like, we're far removed from that now.
Yeah, that's true.
Even with, hey, can your kid complete a 3-piece puzzle? Not really into puzzles, not really into books. What is the thing that they like to do? Screen time, iPad. They can tell me. So then my question is, how do they let you know they want the iPad? And it's like, well, it's kind of out. But if you took it away, how would they let you know that they wanted it? And generally the response would be, I just know, or they would just cry. They're irritable. They're irritable. What if I said, give me your phone, I'm gonna hold it for 24 hours? I don't think you'll be the kindest person because we're so attached to those things, and it's gonna be hard to focus on all of the day's tasks because you're like, when am I gonna get my phone back? Same thing for a kid, but those novel tasks that we want them to be able to do, stack blocks, sort cups, do puzzles, sing social songs, right? Nursery rhymes. Kids are not doing that. They want you to put it on, I won't say the name of and play the song, and they're like, yeah, I'm in it, right? Loves the song.
Yeah.
And so I ask my families, if you play the song and you stop it and you start singing, what do? They don't go to the parent and like pull their face and clap their hands. They slide the iPad.
Oh, wow.
Because they're not looking at you, they're looking at the iPad. So my recommendation for that is cut the music on, turn the iPad over, and you and I are gonna do it. And what you kind of see for the first few interactions is the kid is not interested in you. You're not reinforcing anymore. It's the iPad, and we have to switch that paradigm. It's human to human connection, not human to screen connection.
Yeah.
And that's where you really get those meaningful moments. Because if you're trying to teach a kid, and the kid can't sit still to learn, if they're not attending, they're not learning.
Yeah. Do you remember when you came to First 1,000 Days?
Yes.
Those babies are now about just made a year old.
Oh, interesting.
Turned a year old. And we had a Play With Me, we had a session in Play With Me where all the babies are. And they're moving around now. And my lecture to them was about the importance of nursery rhymes. And I started to sing one, and the baby that was close to me stopped in her tracks to watch me and smile and bounce. And then I invited all of the parents to sing with me. And all the babies stopped in their tracks and looked at their parents and started smiling. It was very powerful.
Yeah.
Like, nursery rhymes are the way to go.
Yes,
So
they are.
find that playlist, but don't use the iPad.
Yeah.
Put it on
Just put
so
it
we
on.
can just listen to
Yeah.
it and do the interactions. A lot of them have the finger play that you can do. We had a blast that day.
Why is that important? Because, right, it's that social exchange. You're looking at me, I'm looking at you, we're sharing smiles, we're pointing. Imitation, right? Gross motor imitation, that's huge. And I don't think there's always the connection of how the dots connect. A kid who is not imitating gross motor movement is not imitating fine motor movement. Oral motor movements are fine motor movements. So if a kid's not imitating your gross motor actions, they're not gonna say cup and say cup. That's just not how it works. And so those social songs are so important. It sets the foundation again. Everything we do, especially in communication, is a turn-taking exchange. And when the relationship is a one-sided relationship, then you kind of start to see where that breaks down. When you start to maybe see some of the traits of autism, one of the more difficult things for parents is like, it's so hard to engage my kid. Like, I go to them and then they move. They're playing with this and I try to play with them and they go somewhere else. And so you're not getting that that exchange, that reciprocity. And as a mother, if you're not sure whether or not you should seek help and you just keep trying to engage that kid and you keep being met with resistance, what's more likely than not going to happen? You're just going to say, okay, let me just let him be. I don't want to agitate him. I don't want to make them upset. It's your kid. You want to connect. You're just not quite able to just yet. And so if you don't know that you need help, human nature would be just to let him be.
Right.
Right?
Yeah.
And when you let him be, then we don't get an opportunity to cultivate and try to make some new neural pathways that it is fun to be with another person, right? And even if you're lining up all the toys, mommy can line them up with you.
Yeah.
And I can make all the fun sounds, so much so that now you're like looking at the stack and you're looking at me like, where's that sound? And that's where you start to build and cultivate that interaction that otherwise you wouldn't be able to get without the help of someone coaching and identifying that this is an issue. I just did a post. There's no quiet kid, not one. Because now sometimes they're like, oh, he's shy. They don't say much. Not babies, not toddlers.
Yeah.
In play, there should be no quiet time. It should be all babbles and laughter and all of the things, because what you're able to do in play mirrors your language abilities. Quiet kids, little language. That's the number one indicator.
Okay.
I should seek help. My kid's quiet, or my kid's playing, and when I go to play, they do something else.
Yeah.
That interaction, I need help.
Yeah.
You need to see someone.
And not to fret when you have that feeling. Just
No.
act on it. And when you hear about neuroplasticity, when you hear about homework and strategies, it's like, okay, there are things that we can do. It's going to be
Absolutely.
okay. So we have had a lot of this because we work in schools. Tell us about what you've learned or what you know about COVID's impact on speech and language development.
Ooh, it's a touchy one, right? We had an influx, twofold. You had an influx of kids, not just kids, adults, parents too, everybody's confined, right? And we had a lot of COVID babies that were birthed during COVID or delivered in COVID. And so mask and all of the things, and then that became a thing. Well, if you're wearing a mask, the kid can't see your mouth and they don't interact. It's about the human connection. I have this really great video, and I have to find it because I included it in my presentation. I had my mask on and I was talking to like an infant and just making the noises, and my eyes was moving, and she was locked in. And you could see her whole little body start to shake because she was like, it was a back and forth.
Yeah.
And I said to Mom, I'm like, are you okay if I record this? Because this is to show you, mask or no mask, it's the interaction, it's the eyes, it's the hands. All of those things make a difference. Why? Because 93% of communication is nonverbal. I don't have to say anything. It's how I look. It's all of those things. It's in the eyes, it's in the hands, Holly. It's in the hands, right? All of those things make a difference. And so what do we know about autism? That eye contact, orienting to face is sometimes one of those traits that occur. And so if you're not looking and you're not attending, no, they're not picking up all of that stuff because it's not even there yet. And so just to get back to the COVID thing, a lot of families come in and they say, well, I think my kid's not talking because we were just inside for COVID. Or, my kid never went to daycare and it's because they haven't been in school. And I always tell parents, no, you're your kid's first play partner. I wouldn't expect them to play with anyone if they don't play with you. What does that mean? Well, like in your home, you're not wearing a mask, right? When you're interacting with your kid, just you, mom, dad, immediate family, no one's wearing a mask. It's not the mask that's causing the language delay. Now, it could be just you're predisposed to it, right, genetically, but there are some other things going on. And so I think there was a time where maybe pediatricians were advising, like, just wait, it's COVID. All of my families are coming in and, don't worry about it. It's just COVID. It's not just COVID, right? I expect after quarantine and COVID, you would go out into the community and maybe the kid might be reluctant, hesitant, right? Because it's like, whoa, all of these new faces and places,
Yeah.
but having a complete shutdown and not able to engage even with a caregiver is not COVID. That's a sign of a delay.
Yeah.
And those shouldn't be tossed to the side as like, oh, it's just COVID. No, if your kid's not playing with you, then I wouldn't expect them to play with a stranger or even another kid. So it starts at home. So I never mind COVID. What's happening in the home, right?
Tell me about your daily routines, right?
Yeah.
Okay, you and I were talking, and you said that there's this misconception that kids don't talk because they're stubborn or they're lazy.
Yeah. I mean, it's the same thing with the name. If he's in that screen, he won't answer. If he's doing something, he won't answer. And I say, if you're in the grocery store and 10 aisles over, you hear just the beginning sound of what your name could potentially be, you're going to turn. You're going to stop. You're going to pause. You're going to do something. And so it's not that they're stubborn or lazy. If you can't communicate using words, this is another little task we do, right? We say communicate to the other person in the room without using words. And it is hilarious, right? So think of a kid who cannot communicate. I'm sure they didn't say today is the day I'm going to wake up and I'm going to bite everybody to communicate my wants and needs because I'm just too lazy to talk.
Right.
No.
That's not the thing. Something else.
Something else is happening, right? Or what happens a lot is that you get the talkers, you get the kids that label everything because it's twofold. And I sometimes when the kids are talking, then it's like, oh, they use words. I don't need help. But then I say, well, what kind of words are they using? And they were like, they know alphabet, letters, numbers, shapes, color, all of it. Wonderful. How does he let you know when he's hungry? He cries. He's on a schedule. He takes my hand and pulls me to the kitchen. But he had words, right? So having words, but not knowing how to use them functionally is not having words. He understands that if I see an apple, I can, apple, mommy, apple. But if I say, what do you want for snack? He can't use that same word apple to let me know I want apple.
Yeah.
It's not functional. And so she still would have to revert back to whatever nonverbal means, right? They have to get wants and needs met. At this age, it's all about the wants and the needs.
Do you use that foundation of they know the alphabet, they know Apple to build upon so that they can get that expressive?
Absolutely. There's no other way you're going to do it. How are you got to meet the kid where they are, right? You can't come into the clinic and then I say, okay, today I'm going to work on this. It's not going to work.
Right.
It's relationship building. It's a back and forth relationship, socially reciprocal dynamic that you and I have to have. So when parents come in and say, well, we just have a speech concern, I just think it's speech. And I say, oh, okay. Is it speech? And they're like, yeah, it's speech. So tell me what sounds he's saying that you don't understand. And I'm like, well, none. Okay, so that's speech, right? Speech is you already have words and sounds, but no one can understand what you're saying because you're articulating or misarticulating the sounds. That's speech. But when you say, well, like he wants to talk, he just can't, then well, that's not speech. That's language. And how do we know he wants to talk? Because I just think he could, right? But how is he indicating that he's wanting to use words, right? That's how you differentiate autism from just developmental delay. I have the words, I have some of it, I just can't put the pieces together to effectively communicate it, versus my interests are completely different in how I see the world, how I process things, how I communicate, all of those things, that's very different.
Yeah.
So you're gonna have to see in our initial assessment, I'm observing. I'm not saying anything. I'm observing. We come in, parents are in the eval, and I'm just sitting and I'm watching.
Watching the parents play with the child?
No, I'm just watching the entire scene unfold. And so I'm watching, and sometimes the kid, is is just on mom or dad, not engaging, not interacting. And sometimes the kid comes in and he sees all the things and he's all over. And it could be as if no one else is in the room. And then I say, is this what it looks like at home? And they're like, yeah, pretty much. He plays well. Wonderful. How does he play with you? Show me how you all play. Or sometimes I say, Mom, you just sit on the floor. Let me see how he engages you. And outside of needing help or comfort, sometimes the kids are just doing their own thing.
Right.
And then that's when we start to break. Because you have to have buy-in. If I see something that you don't see, then the likelihood of you working on a thing that you don't see anyway is less likely.
Yeah.
So my job, the way we do it at the clinic, is a little bit different. It's my job to help you see what I see so that we can then say, okay, we both are locked in on this. Now this is what it should look like, Mommy. This is what we're gonna do. And more often than not, when we're recommending treatment, I'm like, Mom, we're not working on words. We're not working on words. Words won't be the focus of treatment initially. Like, well, why? We want them to talk. Because there are so many other things that happen before words can even come and be functional. And those are the things that we would need to work on. Following direction, responding to name, orienting to faces, right? Initiating interactions with others. Using gestures, pointing, waving, shaking head, yes, no, clapping, all of those things are all foundational skills before words ever come.
Are your parents' workshops that you mentioned, are they just solely for the family, or do you do multiple families at one time having a workshop?
Multiple families at one time, but generally the parent training is for your kid.
Okay.
But I'm working with whoever's working with the kid. So if you're at work and your au pair is who brings, then I need to work with the au pair. I need to work with the person who's working with the kid. Because if you just come to us twice a week, 3 times a week, that's not enough. When you look at interactions when, I can't think of to cite the research, but typical developing kids, at least 2,500 interactions a day with parents or caregivers.
2,500?
2,500. Now, if you start to count, because I had my students do this research, right? Just count how many times. They're with you all day.
Yeah.
They won't leave you alone. Come here, do this, sit down. That's how typical developing kids are interacting with adults. When you see kids with delays, that number goes from 2,500 to like 500.
Wow.
Because the onus is now on the parent or caregiver.
To do all of the
things,
Yeah.
because this kid's not initiating, they're not doing it. And think about that. They don't even have the means to do it. So now you're in a situation where you got to think like, did he initiate with me today? Did we play today? Did he come? Because remember we went back to the eval, when I'm observing, it's help and it's comfort. So generally outside of those two things, they're on their own.
Yeah.
So now you have to remember, because we don't think about that. We just do it, right?
Right.
I'm hungry, I say,
autopilot.
I'm ready to eat.
Right.
I got to get this housework done, right? I'm a mom, I get it. Sometimes I have to say, whoa, did I talk to my kids? Say, no, I'm joking. Yeah. I did talk to them today, but that's when they're little and they're not seeking you out for the meaningful exchange, then it is on you. And that's difficult. You need help.
Yeah. We have a little bit of, with older children here, we have these in dialogue panels, and we encourage parents to be in dialogue with their children. So we have prompts throughout the museum of ways to ask open-ended questions. And I feel that sometimes, and we don't judge parents here, we love them, we realize that parents will answer for the child immediately. So I might say, actually, tell me about what you're drawing. Tell her about what you're drawing. It's a helicopter, right? It's like, okay, just give us some time to let the thinking and the learning happen. Yeah. Do you have any advice for us when we're talking to parents? I mean, we try to tell them like, oh, we're just doing some wait time. We just want to listen to their theories.
Well, it's twofold, because this is even when I'm training up and coming SLPs. Waiting is hard, not just for kids.
It is for everybody.
Because you want to jump in and you want to over facilitate. And that's one of the questions that come in the assessment. Like, how is he letting you know throughout the day? And I've heard, like, we have all the passies lined up on the windowsill. We have a Montessori setup where everything is at his fingertips. And so I say it's a great model, but for kids with delays, now we have to start contriving opportunities. Now we got to set up the community and the environment so that he's kind of got no other choice but to communicate, or you have no other choice but to teach him how to communicate in an effective way so that he's not just doing his own thing. Kids with delays learn quickly how to be independent. They're probably your most independent.
Yeah.
Because I don't have the words.
I'll figure it out.
And I'll just figure it out. And their tenacity, unmatched.
Yep.
A kid who wants a snack, what? And I'm gonna get the snack by any means necessary. And while, yes, that is a strength, we kind of gotta go back, because that's not gonna work when it's time to go to daycare, when it's time to go to school.
Yeah.
All of those things, and then you start to see some of the other behaviors manifest, right? And so now school's calling. He's a biter. He's biting all of the kids. Snack time, play time. No, he didn't wake up and say, today is the day I'm gonna bite Max. I got it on my mind. I'm coming in with it. It doesn't. Something happens.
Yep.
And he's not effectively able to communicate. And so goes back to, don't wait. If you had something that was wrong with you and I went to the physician, it's cancer awareness, so let's use that, but very loosely, right? You wouldn't want your doctor to say, just wait. Maybe that'll go away.
Right.
Maybe it'll fix itself. That's not a good advice. And that's not the advice that I give parents.
Absolutely.
I would rather you be worried and come in and I can give you peace of mind, he's fine, versus not even knowing that you should be worried. Because if I see you at 5 or 6, by the time it's 5 or 6, it definitely looks different than it looked at 2 or 3 or 18 months. And now you're dealing with a whole host of other issues that
You have to unpack.
you have to,
What, I know you mentioned a website earlier where families can get affordable services or services if they can't afford. Is that something that we can put across the screen later if you give me
It is. It's Louisiana Early Steps program.
Louisiana Early Steps program. Okay.
Each region has one. I can give you the information. You don't need a doctor's referral. You can make the referral. You can call and have a referral made. You can go to the pediatrician and say, hey, I think my kid, I want him to participate. It's available to any family with a kid under the age of 3 who exhibits developmental delays.
Okay, that's awesome. It's a great resource.
Yeah.
And so is Chatternola.
Yes.
Do we have any questions from our Zoom audience?
So I seem to become the voice of the teacher, since that was my background. And so not to step on toes, but could you address a little bit about baby talk isn't really the right way to describe it, but words that children say that parents think are really cute, and they continue to reinforce incorrect language, I guess, because it's fun, and then all of a sudden that child is 5 or 6 and they're still.
So back to this eval, right? Because all things happen in the eval. So sometimes there are words, right, that kids sounds that they use even in the eval, and I watch this because it's amazing to see. And they might, and the parents like, oh, he wants, and I'm like, oh, and then dad will say, well, I don't know, or sometimes dad will say, when she's gone, I can't take him with you because I don't even understand. And so the question maybe would be, if you're not able to care for him in that immediate moment, or you needed someone to watch your kid, how would they know? Is he okay? Is he going to be able to communicate to another person and they understand and he get his wants and needs met? And when they say no, then I'm like, okay, so we got to work on this, right? Because we're looking for generalization across communities, across people. Also, what happens a lot is they say, oh, he can do it. He does it at home all the time. He just doesn't do it for people outside of, my husband. And then I say, I knew a skill, right? And you asked me to do the thing that I'm able to do. It wouldn't matter if we were here, if we were at home, if it was you, if it was Miss Shannon, if it was if it's mastered, it's mastered. And so sometimes helping them to understand when it's not a mastered skill, you only see it under certain conditions. And if you're not like moving in a scientific way, you didn't write down the conditions that had to be, right? The conditions that evoke that response. And so that's why you can't get them to do it again. Because you don't, I don't know what, maybe it was the sun and the blinds halfway and I don't know. And so we can't operate on that, even in the assessment. And I think I need to say this. It's okay to be honest in the assessment. It's not a measure of your parenting.
Good point.
It's not a measure of how much you love your kid. It's not at all. Judgment-free zone. But when you're not honest about what your kid can or cannot do, then we're not able to accurately assess some things that might occur outside of a structured environment. And that gives us meaningful information.
Yeah.
And we kind of need to know. Sometimes you read the questionnaire and what's your concern? My only concern is that they can't say words, they want to talk. That's my only concern, nothing else.
Right. And I do everything I'm supposed to do.
And then we get in and I'm like, whoa, okay, so what's this? Does this happen often, right? Well, yeah. And so what do you think that is? And it's like, oh, you know, my kid plays, they play with all the kids. They play, kids who love to play with older kids, right? Little 2-year-olds, 3-year-olds. Do they play? Do they get along with peers? And most parents are like, yeah, we play. If they go to the birthday party and it's already happening and you all got there late, tell me what your kid's going to do. It's all about how you set up the question.
Okay.
Because if you say, does your kid play with other kids? Typically they'll say, yeah, they play with other kids. So then I say, okay, we went to a birthday party, already happening, and you arrived late. Tell me what that looks like for your kid. What do they do? Are they the kid that's gonna hang out next to you for like 30 minutes?
Wrapped around your leg?
Yep. Or are they the kid that's gonna kind of like go to the edge and watch the other kids play? Are they the kid that's gonna get in the mix but not engage with any of the other kids? Or you see this quite often. Are they the kid that goes to the group and just starts running? That's the thing. You have to see it in real time.
Just starts running.
Just starts running. Because that's their way of initiating chase. Guess who that doesn't work for? Same age peers. Guess who responds to that? Older kids and adults. Because the language demands are a lot less with older kids and adults. They kind of go to where you want to go. So if you have blocks and an older kid comes to play, and if you didn't want to share the blocks, they wouldn't make you share the blocks. They would do what you wanted them to do, and then they will facilitate. Let's do this, let's do that. The language load is not there. But if I put you in a room of all same age peers, friends not gonna say, do you want blue or black? They're gonna just take it, right? Because
Yes.
that's the kid.
Yeah.
And your kid's gonna either be the kid that bites, because that was mine, who can't say mine, who can't say give, who can't gain attention and say, because they're not pointing, right?
Right.
It could look a whole bunch of ways.
Do parents usually not know how to answer that? Or they're like, I don't know, I haven't really paid attention. Do they automatically know who their kid is
they
at a
know.
party? Yeah.
They know. They know who their kid is.
Yeah.
And then I say, do you think that, what do you think about that? And they're like, wow. Then you start to kind of see them process and the wheels start turning. Because think about it. If you don't have a point of reference, then you might just say, that's how they are. Or I
Right.
thought this was normal. Or I didn't realize that other kids were already doing this.
What I'm enjoying so much is, as a parent, I would enjoy so much just having these conversations with you, because this is so much more than speech and language. I would be like, I would love to know what Ashley thinks about my kids doing this and that and those things.
Come
and
and
to
see
build
me.
relationships.
We're here, right?
This is great. So you answered that number one question. I had misconceptions about what a speech and language pathologist does, and now I do not. That's awesome. Is there anything else you want our audience to know about what kind of services there are out there? Any other misconceptions you want to clear up?
Yeah, not that. No, I think we pretty much
We
covered it all.
some good stuff here. So if you are a parent who is in that window, I might be a little concerned. I think you heard it again and again. Ashley said, go see a professional.
Yeah.
Go see Chatternola.
See.
And then what was, one more time, the name of that place?
Louisiana Early Steps.
Louisiana Early Steps. I don't know why. We have too many early phrases around here.
Yeah.
So I was like, which one is it?
Now, every state has that. That's a federally mandated
Yep.
program. So any Louisiana resident is eligible for it. Now, again, it's a free program.
Yeah.
So you take what you can get. But if you need more, then keep looking.
Yeah.
I will say this, find the right fit. Not every facility, not every center is going to be the right fit. We may not be the right fit for you. I wouldn't, because sometimes families go and it's not what they expected. And then they're like, I'm good, I'm just not gonna go. No. One, advocate for your child, because that's what we're teaching at our clinic, right? Advocacy. We're going to advocate for your child until you're able to effectively advocate on his behalf. And then until your kid is effectively able to advocate for himself. But if you feel like this is not a good fit, this is not working, then by all means, don't stop going. Just find someone who may be a better fit. Don't get stuck. Or if it gives you a bad feeling, then altogether just discard it. Parent choice, always. Find someone who is your kid's jam and go there.
Thank y'all for your questions. Please keep sending us your questions. We will find the experts. They're here. They're our neighbors. We say it takes a village, and so we're so happy that you were here to clear up some of these misconceptions.
Thank you.
And we hope to see you for First 1,000 Days again.
Absolutely.
All right. Thanks so
Total
much.
pleasure. Thanks, guys.
Thanks for coming.
Bye.